You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Joining us now, Ned Ryun. Ned is the president and founder, CEO of American Majority Action and American Majority, and he's an author of great books, and he's with us now. Ned Ryun, great to have you.
Yeah, great to be with you, John. You know, I was sitting here listening to your intro thinking, kind of towards the end of my book, I make the point that if you were to compress all of the founders' words, their documents, their correspondence, their debates, and were to compress it into three words, it would be these: keep America free. And it's more than just words, though, that require us, that are required of us. It's action. And so that's why we do what we do, right, in the field. We have to actually put what we believe into action and then do it in a meaningful way. And that's why we do what we do at American Majority Action, right? We do doors. We do phones. We do peer-to-peer texting. We try to have as personal a contact as possible because the studies and statistics back it up, that it is the live contacts that actually persuade and drive people to the polls. And, John, you're right. I mean, we've got to act like the next 22 days as if our lives and the lives of our children and our grandchildren depend on it and their freedoms. Because you look at what some of these things they're discussing, and I'm thinking about, you know, most importantly, this whole refusal to answer, will you pack the Supreme Court? But let me tell people why this is important. I mean, not only the packing of the Supreme Court, and by that we don't mean filling vacancies, despite all of their lies. It's about taking the number of Supreme Court justices and taking it from 9 to 11 or 9 to 15 in hopes that it will become a super legislative body that Democrats can then ram through everything that they've ever wished for. And the reason they could do that is because they want to add Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico as states to add 4 more blue senators to the Senate. And then they want to remove the legislative filibuster, meaning it will be a simple majority to not only pass legislation, but of course we know the judicial filibuster has already been blown up. You would only need 51 votes to pass every major piece of legislation they would want and put every liberal Supreme Court justice on the court so they could pack it. They want to remove the Electoral College. They want to make illegal immigration de facto open borders by removing the criminality to illegal immigration. All of these things, John, are aimed at one goal: single-party rule. They're not interested in democracy. They're not interested in a constitutional republic. They are interested in dominating the American people and removing their voice from the process. That is what is at stake on November 3rd.
Power. It's all about power.
It is. It's all about power and about basically shutting the American people out and saying, you know what, this democracy thing, we have found it wildly inconvenient. You know, they've been hollowing out our republic for the last 100 years with their administrative state, but now they're just at the point where, like, this is taking us way too long, right? We're done. We're done trying to pretend that we actually care about a republic, about democracy. Screw it all. We're just going to go for the whole cake. That is what is at stake, and that's why it's, you know, it's not only Donald Trump. I mean, obviously, John, you were talking about the enthusiasm. I want to remind people, go look at the battleground states polls of likely voters. He's up 3 to 4 with likely voters in Florida. He's up 4 with likely voters in Arizona. He's up by 4 with likely voters in Ohio. He is within the margin of error with likely voters in both Wisconsin and Michigan. This is game on. It is going to come down the home stretch, and I am convinced that the work that we are doing and others are doing in regards to live voter contact, get out the vote, that can make the difference of 2 to 3 points. I think that will be the difference in some of these upper Rust Belt states. That will be the difference in deciding who wins the White House. And quite frankly, who keeps the majority in the Senate. It's now or never, people. 22 days. Get it on.
Yeah, because the stakes, this is not like Carter,
No.
Ford, or...
It's
not even like it's not even like McGovern.
No, it's regime change politics, John.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is the thing. This is statism versus constitutional republic. We are at a massive fork in the road, and that's why it's so contentious and so there's so much vitriol from the left because they realize what's at stake. We're not talking and quibbling about, well, the tax cut should be a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger. We should do a little bit of this tweaking around the edges. This is monumental shift in how we are run as a country. They know it. We had better know it as well.
Ned Ryun with us. Ned is the founder, CEO, and president of American Majority. Ned, you've got a new book coming out. When does it come out?
I hope that it's going to come out sometime in the spring, John. Obviously, in the process of writing Restoring Our Republic, my other book, and then I'd written some stuff with my dad, Jim Ryun. Back in the day, there was a fascinating story that it's really been on my mind for years, actually, about a young man by the name of Dr. Joseph Warren, who was a brilliant physician in Boston during 1760s, 1770s, one of the real driving forces in the American Revolution. So without giving too much away, let's just overall say the book is about the months preceding Bunker Hill, with a microcosm between Dr. Joseph Warren and a British officer. It's called The Adversaries, and it really does highlight everything that was taking place in those 9 months leading up to Bunker Hill, and highlights what was at stake. And really, honestly, John, fact is stranger than fiction. There's some really crazy stuff that was going on in revolutionary Boston in the fall and spring into the early summer of 1774 and 1775, which most people don't know. And I've been doing, as a history and English major at KU, and one of the things we were taught was the historical method. You've got to go back to the original sources, and going back and reading the diaries of British officers in Boston at the time, reading the original writings of Warren and others, eyewitness accounts of the days and months leading up to Bunker Hill. Fascinating. And so it's one of the things, again, it's going to be historical fiction because I'm going to color the edges a little bit, but I'm going to call it faction. How's that, John? That 90% of it is going to be based on real people, real diaries, real eyewitness accounts. And I hope that I can tell it in such a way that people will realize not only is an inspiring story, but it kind of applies to today, where an overweening government has decided to dictate to people, these are your life choices. This is, you get to accept this. And the American colonists saying, we have rights. We have God-given rights, and you are taking them away, and at some point, words will stop, and we will pick up muskets, and kind of that whole evolution and process where they said, we have our God-given rights, and you will not take them away from us no matter what.
Well, I tell you what, Ned, I love the work that you're doing, and especially with American Majority Action and getting people involved and getting them paid, too, which is what the Democrats have been doing. I mean, it's fabulous work. I want to get back to something you said earlier, these polls with the likely voters.
Yeah.
And how different they are from the fake polls that go on. Just for the layman out there, explain the difference.
Well, there's a couple of things at play here, John. So I hope people will hold on here as I explain this. First of all, the weighting, right? You look at some of these polls, the weighting is absolutely insane, reflecting nothing that even comes close to voter turnout, where they've overweighted Democrats in their polls, underweighted Republicans. So that's skewed. If there's any polls of registered voters, ignore those. Those are trash. Those are complete nonsense. Nobody pays any attention to those. You shouldn't either. With likely voters, these are people that are likely to vote on November 3rd. So these are people they want to talk to. We go, how are you going to vote, right? So it's got to be likely voters, and we all know this isn't a national election, John. It's 7 to 10 states. So look at the Floridas and the Ohio's and the Wisconsins and the Michigans and the Pennsylvanias. Look at those states. The other thing I will point out that most people are not paying attention to, John, to their credit, and I have a lot of things that I could quibble with the RNC about, they have done a phenomenal job on voter registration in Pennsylvania and Florida and some of these other battleground states, and I mention that because of this. 80% of those that are newly registered typically vote in the next election. They're super voters. Well, guess who don't show up in likely poll voters? Newly registered voters. We have never closed the gap as much as we have in Florida. We are at historical highs of registered Republicans in Florida, as narrow a gap as we've ever had with Democrats. Democrats still have a lead in Florida in registration, but we've never been this close. Same in Pennsylvania. Those people do not show up in these polls because they've never voted before.
Right, so they're not contacted because they're not listed as a voter.
That's right.
Certainly not. Yeah, right.
But guess what happens, John? Obviously, what you do when you register a voter, and some of the stuff they're doing down in Florida is they're registering, going door to door. They're tracking them. So now that they know that they're registered, guess who they're going to turn out to vote? Obviously, the people that they just registered to vote. They are creating a new batch of super voters that have never voted before, have never once come across the radar of a pollster.
So that's okay. So that you've got that, which is under the fake polls narrative. Plus, you've got this massive ground game.
But the other thing I want to say to this is, John, I was talking with a brother-in-law who's like me, who's done a lot of grassroots, is very good at it. And we were talking about what we call the poll tax or Bradley effect. And the Bradley effect was a gubernatorial race out in California where somebody was in the lead by 6 points. Nobody wanted to answer.
Tom Bradley.
Yeah, right.
Tom Bradley, the mayor of Los Angeles.
Mayor of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Long time ago.
Long time ago, but didn't want to vote. They didn't actually want to admit to pollsters. Bradley's up by 6, loses by 1, because nobody wanted to admit they were going to vote against him. Same thing with Trump. And I'm telling you, my brother-in-law and I had this conversation. Is the poll tax or Bradley effect for Trump 3 points, 5 points, or 7 points? And I have to tell you, seeing all these reports and studies where conservatives are self-censoring, where they're refusing to talk to pollsters, refusing to admit they're going to vote for Trump for fear they'll be called a deplorable or a racist, I got to tell you, I'll say for conservative reasons, I think it might be a 4 or 5% poll tax, and then you tack on top of that a fantastic get-out-the-vote game. I hate to say this because I don't want to jinx myself, John. If we continue down the home stretch as strongly as we are running right now, and as my father always told me, 5 yards through the finish line, I feel pretty good about this, but we've got to close strong, and that's why, again, we're doing what we're doing with American Majority Action. Leave no stone unturned. Do everything that you can. And the last thing I'll say is this, John. I know that Job Creators Network is doing the 10 for 20, right? Find 10 people, pledge you're going to find 10 people to turn out November 3rd. I want to take it up a notch, 20 for 20. People listening, if you're not going to be involved with a campaign or American Majority Action, you start putting together a list of 20 people right now. Get their name and their phone number, and you make it your goal that on November 3rd, every last one of those 20 people gets out to vote for Donald Trump.
Well, if you do that, we're going to win.
We're going to crush
about it.
We have to.
Now, let's get to Steve Bannon's position, and he's on my show. Of course, we run him on the John Fredericks Radio Network War Room. I was at an event with him Saturday, and he's like, look, the Democrats know they can't win on game day. Trump's going to run up a big lead. Then they're going to try to steal it with these fake, phony mail-in ballots. How do you deal with that, Ned?
Well, they're doing some good work in Wisconsin, right? So we finally got a stay on the stupidity in Wisconsin where they were trying to extend by 6 days the ability to count these late absentee ballots. So finally some state legislators in Wisconsin have been recognized by the Seventh Circuit to have standing. So we've put to rest, or at least put on pause, some of the stupidity in Wisconsin. We did get bad news out of Pennsylvania the other night that they're still going to allow even unpostmarked ballots to be counted 3 days after the election. So we've got some problems in Pennsylvania. There's still some problems in Michigan. The most important thing is for the Trump campaign, and I've had conversations with people very high up, decision makers, if you guys can stop the steal, if you can stop the stupidity that is turning election day into election weeks, I feel really good that he will win the Electoral College, maybe even the popular vote. But you got to put an end to this madness. So I know that there are a lot of monies actually being spent by the Trump campaign to try and stop the stupidity. And the other point I'll make for those listening, John, you know the guy on the other side that's really pushing this and trying to absolutely annihilate the free and fair elections in our country?
Who?
A gentleman by the name of Mark Elias. And if you don't recognize the name, you should, because he was eyeball deep in the Fusion GPS Steele dossier. Not a good person, John.
Mm-hmm. And so what is his involvement?
Oh, he's been helping drive the court challenges to some of these and trying to extend election days for a week or 2 weeks. After in Michigan, it's up to 2 weeks after Election Day.
I mean, that's insane. But
it's insane.
Basically, what they've done in Michigan is say, okay, we're going to know exactly how many phony ballots we need in order to win. And so we'll just go, we have 2 weeks to go find them. I mean, that's
they've legalized ballot
done.
Harvesting. No, they've legalized ballot harvesting by judicial fiat. This judge decided, you know what, I'm just going to make ballot harvesting legal. And for those listening, you need to understand, when people are sent an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot, people know where they're being sent, right? Mm-hmm. So now people that are not even official poll workers, left-wing activists, can go knock on doors and collect ballots, and then supposedly they're supposed to deliver them to that precinct voting place. This is ripe with voter manipulation, voter fraud. It is illegal in most states. Obviously, it's legal in California. That's how they stole 6 congressional seats in 2018. Now this judge has essentially, by judicial fiat, made ballot harvesting in Michigan legal for 2 weeks. I mean, this is awful. And then, Governor Whitmer yesterday said, well, this idea of having an arbitrary date picked by somebody is merely for political purposes. No, Congress picked in 1845 after the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November should be the election date. This is not arbitrarily picked. It has been the same for 100 years.
Right.
This is insane. And they are literally trying to systematically blow up our republic by removing and crushing the integrity of our election process. It's shameful, but not that surprising, actually. John
Fredericks Radio Network. Thanks, Ned Ryun, for being with us. President, CEO, American Majority Action. Hey, get involved.
That's
email,
right. Sign up.
Email, winvirginia2020@gmail.com. Get involved. winvirginia2020@gmail.com. Ned, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, John.